Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much to all the new subscribers and all the support I've had since the Burnley video, nearly 2,000 views on that one. Added to the Schalke video, it's got nearly 1,000 views. There seems to be a lot of increased interest in the channel, which is always really good from my perspective. So please do continue to like, share and subscribe if this is the sort of thing that you like. Today's video is going to be looking at Newcastle's search for a new director of football. Obviously everyone's aware of the Dan Ashworth situation. He remains on gardening leave with the negotiations with Manchester United at an impasse. But Newcastle are moving forward in their search for a replacement with Crystal Palace's Dougie Freedman and Johannes Spors from the 777 group on a list of potential replacements, as well as the likes of Hugo Viana has been mentioned as well, and even ex-AC Milan defender and sporting director Paolo Maldini. For the purpose of today's video, we're going to be focusing on Freedman, who's reported to be at an advanced stage in the process to succeed Ashworth. I haven't heard that he's got the job or anything like that. I haven't heard that it's that close. But I do know that Newcastle are very, very interested in Freedman. He's on the list of potential successors, but obviously there will be a compensation package that needs to be drawn up with Crystal Palace if he is to join Newcastle. The evidence of what he would bring to Newcastle is quite clear given the performance of Crystal Palace. As I record this on Tuesday, it was last night that Crystal Palace took apart Manchester United 4-0 at Selhurst Park with 2 goals from Michael Elise, who is one of the shining lights of Freedman's recruitment drive at Palace, with Adam Wharton from Blackburn, who's another interesting player that Newcastle had scouted extensively before he made the move to South London in January from Blackburn, and Abereze, who's another player who Newcastle have long watched as well from his days at QPR. There's 3 players there that really showcase what Freedman would bring. He is a master of scouting out the lower leagues, and I think Newcastle do need to get a bit creative with their recruitment because of the PSR situation. They can't, obviously, as we've spoken about on this channel before, go in all guns blazing this summer and bring in another Alexander Isak for £60 million, another Sandro Tonali for £50 million because of the PSR situation. So with that in mind, scouting out different markets will be crucial. That's obviously been where Newcastle have had success in previous years, obviously going back to the Graham Carr years when they had the French links and the Dutch links as well, and links in the Bundesliga. They've got a lot of good players from Europe. That's happened in this current era as well with Sven Botman, Isak, and Bruno Guimaraes. But Steve Nixon is really the driving force behind the European market. I think he has scouted in Europe. He's the head of recruitment at Newcastle at the moment. He's scouted extensively in Europe. So it'd be very interesting to see how he would dovetail with Dougie Freedman, who's got this mastery of finding players in the Championship. And there are obviously a lot of really talented players in the Championship who would be worth a look. I know Newcastle like the look of Morgan Whittaker from Plymouth, who scored, I think, 24 goals in the Championship this season. They've just avoided relegation at the weekend after beating Hull City. But he could be available for a good price. He was linked with a move to Lazio and had a fantastic season. Somebody of the right age profile and the right position that Newcastle are looking for. But I think it's not so much about names, it's more about the idea of what somebody would bring. And I think last night the evidence was clear as to what Freedman would bring if he was to replace Ashworth. The extensive scouting of the Championship in the lower leagues has created a real situation where Crystal Palace have 3 ready-made Premier League superstars on their hands in Eze, Elise and Wharton, who, if and when they sell, they'll sell for huge amounts of profit. And they all seem to be gelling really well under Oliver Glasner as well. Glasner's pedigree, obviously winning the Europa League with Eintracht Frankfurt, and his ideology and his expansive way of playing football and pressing high has really worked for bringing the best out of those 3 players. And that's exactly what Newcastle are about under Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe obviously likes the English market as well. He obviously likes players who can quickly adapt to his system. We've seen that with Anthony Gordon, as I mentioned in my last video about him, and the fact that it took him a few weeks to adjust to life at Newcastle. That's quicker and easier when you've played in England and you've played in systems like that. It would be fantastic if Newcastle were to go and buy a Abereze, for example. But I think the thing that Freedman would bring is that sort of knowledge and understanding of finding gems in hidden markets, which is really what this is about. I think recruitment-wise for Newcastle, they have to get creative, and his understanding of finding great players in the EFL is unmatched. Really, I think what he's shown at Palace, the fact that he brought in Wharton for £18 million, which it looks an absolute steal now. I think a lot of Blackburn fans, yes, they needed the money in January, but they've been left disappointed that deal went through the way it did, because they could have got more money from him. And on the basis of the recent performances, that's absolutely true. I can always hear the doubters of this sort of idea saying that why would Newcastle be looking at the Championship? Why would they be looking at players in the lower leagues? But the thing is, if you look at the England squad, most of the players in there have come from the lower leagues, have come from the EFL, and it's a real great breeding ground that needs to be, for me, taken advantage of, and that's exactly what Dougie Freedman would bring. As I mentioned earlier, other options like Hugo Viana, who Newcastle fans will remember as a bit of a damp squib of a young player who, when he came in under Sir Bobby Robson in 2003, he's still got a lot of fond memories of Newcastle. He still loves the club, still has fond memories of the area. I spoke to him for an interview in 2018, and he couldn't really talk any higher of the city, of the club, of the area. It just didn't quite work out for him stylistically, in terms of the football, in terms of adjustment to the pace of the football. But as a director, what he's done at Sporting Lisbon, working alongside Ruben Amorim, and the recruitment that goes on there, obviously Marcus Edwards coming in there and starring from Spurs. Victor Gyökeres is another example, again from the EFL, gone there and shone at Sporting Lisbon's probably worth about 40 or 50 million for the coming market, with Arsenal obviously having been linked with Alexander Isak. He's on their list as well. So I think really there's a common theme about these different names that are coming through, and that's targeting untapped markets, and that's exactly what Dougie Freedman's done. The evidence is there from last night against Manchester United, with Elise shining. He's clearly proven himself to be a superstar at this level. There's other players out in other teams, like Ollie Watkins as well. It's Ivan Toney. As I mentioned, a number of the England players. Jude Bellingham started his career at Birmingham, shone as a 16-year-old, and has gone on to become probably the best player in the world at the moment. So I don't agree with this idea that Newcastle should not look at the EFL, and I think if they go for Freedman, that's what they'll be getting. But that isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you look at what he's done at Crystal Palace, players he's found, and all for decent prices. They didn't have to overpay for Eze, who I've mentioned in the previous video. I think he's a superb player. Michael Elise, I've spoken to people around him who've said that that he's worked hard for his journey as well, starting at Reading after rejection at Chelsea. So the thing about the players that you're getting from the EFL is that they've already working. They already know how to work hard. They've already faced hardship in their careers. Newcastle have already shown that they want to build a culture of signing good young players who they can grow and develop. And I'm not sure there are many better out there at finding those players, certainly in the English markets, than Dougie Freedman. As I say, the deal isn't done yet. It's interesting to see whether it'll happen, and there'll be complications with Crystal Palace, similar to the ones that Newcastle are putting Manchester United through, obviously with this situation with Ashworth as well. But we'll see what happens. But as I say, update on the director of football thing. I think Dougie Freedman is very much of interest to Newcastle, and that's certainly one to watch. Thank you very much for joining me. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.